The research question we will be exploring is how social isolation affects the mental health of Melbourne men aged 18 to 30. Social isolation can be defined as an objective circumstance in which there is a reduced or complete lack of social relationships and interactions. The effect of social isolation on mental health has been thoroughly researched in older adults and women and has been found to have correlations with poor mental health. However, research revolving around younger men is lacking. The current global pandemic has caused areas such as Melbourne to become heavily restricted in social activities. The lack of previous research on young men has meant the implications of these heavy restrictions are unknown. In order to provide the appropriate support for men in social isolation and ensure minimum harm is caused, the mental health aspects and consequences should be studied.
Our research design would likely be a mixed method embedded study using a questionnaire with a mixture of closed, quantitative, and open, qualitative questions. The reason for this decision lies in the fact that quantitative results alone may tell us that mental health has been affected during the quarantine. However, it does not say whether it is due to social isolation or other unknown factors. Qualitative open questions allow participants to expand on these experiences during the isolation period and may allow insight into whether indeed social isolation is the factor resulting in mental health or other factors may be playing a role, such as loss of a loved one or previous history of seasonal depression. There are definite limitations to the study, which had to be accounted for. Face-to-face interviews may lead to inaccurate responses as a result of participants feeling uncomfortable with revealing sensitive information. To counteract this, anonymous questionnaires were selected and would be distributed via SurveyMonkey. Unfortunately, this would mean that our sample may be compromised, as we cannot guarantee all participants are indeed Melbourne men aged 18 to 30, as well as not all questions may be interpreted correctly. This is a compromise we had to take, as we would rather risk possible error in the sampling group, which may not in fact occur, than a larger error in the honesty of responses. Our study population is Melbourne men aged 18 to 30, and our theoretical group is all men aged 18 to 30, as this is a group which has largely been missed in the current existing research revolving social isolation and its effects on mental health. Non-probability sampling would be used to allow a questionnaire to get out into the public. Snowball sampling would be performed by asking Melbourne residents to share our questionnaire through social media accounts. This would be done to ensure that participants volunteering remain completely anonymous to the research team. The sample size would be large, as a small sample size would have a high risk of random error. A sample size of 10 may find all 10 participants to have been negatively affected, meaning 100% of men. However, a sample size of 20 may reveal only 10 have been negatively affected, whilst the other 10 have not, meaning 50% of participants. And so a very large sample size would be required to prevent this error from occurring. Validity would be high, and a large enough sample size would allow reliability to remain high also.
The mental health of participants will be measured during the quarantine and then remeasured 6 months later, and then again 1 year after the quarantine period is over. This will be measured by the Kessler Psychological Distress Scale, which is a proven, valid, and reliable method of recording the psychological distress on a 5-level scale. Limitations can occur in this experiment as a result of the anonymous and voluntary nature of this research, meaning the same participants may not participate in the subsequent questionnaires preceding the quarantine period. By utilizing a larger sample size, however, we should be able to attain an accurate state of the general population's mental health and use this to analyze whether this has changed in the time since the quarantine period. Particular ethical concerns need to be taken into consideration to ensure the research is appropriate to be conducted. This research is based on the individual's psychological experiences and questioning whether traumatic events have taken a toll on them. The nature of this research involves the possibility of uncomfortable probing into the minds of the participants, and this could result in the negative effect of the patients when attempting to recall these potential disturbing events. In this case, we must remember the ethical principle of non-maleficence, in particular causing the psychological harm as well as social harm. To ensure non-maleficence, We should explain the detailed possible contents of the questionnaire before the participants partake, ensuring veracity. This leads into the ethical principle of autonomy, which would be ensured by allowing the survey to be completely voluntary and be non-completed if the participant decides against finishing halfway through. Consent would also be required before the results are sent to the research team. The anonymous nature of the questionnaire would ensure the research team have no idea where the information is coming from, hence minimizing the risk of social harm through confidentiality, and also ensuring the research team are not aware of who begins and who does not complete the questionnaire.
If social isolation negatively affects the mental health of young men, then this would mean research into more appropriate stress assistance for men would have to be undertaken. However, when social isolation does appear to have some effect, but not a very strong correlation is present, then further research could be undertaken to investigate other causes and factors that may instead be attributing to the negative mental health of young men. These results could potentially pinpoint important areas where mental health of young men is suffering and allow the government to utilize particular services to help and improve the quality of people's mental well-being.
Thank you for listening to our presentation.